In the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, where the distances between continents are measured in thousands of kilometers of saltwater, there exists a small island so isolated that if humanity were to abandon it, there would be nowhere else to go. That island is Easter Island, or as its indigenous people call it, Rapa Nui. Today, it belongs to Chile, but for nearly all of its history, Rapa Nui existed as a closed world, completely isolated from the rest of humankind. And it is precisely in this place, which seems at first glance entirely unremarkable, that humanity left behind a question so profound that modern science has yet to answer it fully. Hundreds of colossal stone statues stand along the island's shores, their backs turned to the ocean, their faces directed inland. No clear explanations, no written records, only stone, wind, and time. The first question is not how were they made, but rather why would such a small society choose this path? More than 1,000 years ago, the ancestors of the Rapa Nui people, Polynesian seafarers, undertook one of the most audacious journeys in human history. Without compasses, without maps, without metal, they crossed the open ocean in wooden canoes, guided only by the stars, the winds, and ancestral memory. This was not accidental drift, it was a calculated decision to find a new land, isolated yet safe enough to begin again. When they arrived, they entered an environment that was just sufficient for survival, but never abundant. Arable land was limited, timber was limited, seabirds were limited, coastal fish were limited. From the very first day, Rapa Nui society existed within a closed ecosystem, one in which every decision carried long-term consequences. And then they began to carve statues. At the volcanic crater of Rano Radaku, blocks of volcanic tuff were shaped with stone tools. The Rapa Nui did not carve statues in the way we might expect. They began with the face, deep-set eyes, a long nose, a projecting chin, as if the spirit of the statue had to be awakened before the body could take form. Each Moai was not an anonymous human figure. It represented an ancestor, a chief, a lineage. It was power turned into stone. At first, the statues were relatively modest in size, but over time they grew larger, taller, heavier, more elaborate. And here a troubling question emerges. If the statues were purely spiritual in purpose, why did they need to become so immense? The answer becomes clearer as Rapa Nui society developed. Lineages competed with one another. Power was no longer measured solely by land or food, but by the ability to mobilize labor to construct statues larger than those of rivals. Moai became a metric of political strength. The larger the statue a lineage could erect, the more it proclaimed that its ancestors possessed stronger mana, offered greater protection, and therefore deserved leadership. And from this point on, society entered a race that no one could afford to stop. Carving statues was difficult, transporting them was far so. No wheels, no metal, no draft animals. A single Moai weighing dozens of tons had to be moved from Rano Radaku to ceremonial platforms along the coast, across rugged terrain, under constant winds, over distances of many kilometers. For centuries, it was believed that this could only have been accomplished by cutting down forests and dragging the statues on wooden rollers inch by inch. If that were true, then each statue consumed not only human effort, but the island's future. What is striking is that Rapa Nui oral tradition does not say the statues were dragged, it says the Moai walked. This sounds like myth, yet when modern scientists experimented by tying ropes to either side of a statue and rocking it back and forth, the statue did, in fact, move forward, slowly but steadily. And unexpectedly, this method required far less wood than the roller hypothesis. Regardless of the method, the cost remained immense. Trees were cut at an accelerating rate, ropes demanded ever more plant fibers, time and labor were diverted away from agriculture. Yet the race continued because no lineage dared to stop first. When the Moai were raised upon stone platforms, ahu, such as Ahu Tongariki, they faced inland toward villages, fields, and descendants. This orientation was not accidental. It was a constant reminder that the ancestors were watching, bestowing blessings, and making demands. But nature does not respond to symbols. As forests disappeared, large seagoing canoes vanished with them. The Rapa Nui could no longer fish far offshore. Seabirds, an essential source of protein, lost their nesting grounds. Without tree roots to hold the soil, wind and rain stripped the land bare. Crops failed, hunger followed, and when food became a matter of survival, belief began to fracture. Conflict erupted between lineages. Statues once regarded as sacred were deliberately toppled, not by natural disaster, not by earthquakes, but by human hands. When mana no longer delivered sustenance, the symbols of mana became the first targets of destruction. Rapa Nui did not collapse in a single moment. It unraveled slowly, across generations living through scarcity, extreme rituals, and violence. When Europeans arrived in the 18th century, they brought forces Rapa Nui had never encountered: disease, forced labor, and external domination. The population collapsed catastrophically. A society already fragile was pushed to the brink. By the late 19th century, the island had been turned into a livestock ranch, and the indigenous people were confined to a small fraction of their land. Indigenous history was broken not only by environmental limits, but by global power. And then, in the 20th century, a paradox emerged. The Moai, once deliberately toppled, were raised again, not by the ancient Rapa Nui, but by archaeologists, engineers, and modern communities. They were no longer erected to assert ancestral wana, but to tell a story. The story of a society that went too far within a closed system. The final hook of the Rapa Nui lies here. We restore the symbols of the past to remind ourselves not to repeat their path. In modern science, Easter Island is often called a miniature Earth, not because it resembles our planet in size, but because it mirrors its structural dilemma. Finite resources, growing populations, technology and symbols driving competition, short-term gains overriding long-term costs, and once the threshold is crossed, there is no other island to escape to. One question continues to haunt researchers. Whether in geology, ecology, or economics, was the collapse of Rapa Nui inevitable, or was it the result of a sequence of choices that could have been different? The answer is not simple. There was no single catastrophic decision. Instead, there were many decisions that were rational in the short term, yet collectively produced long-term disaster. That is what makes this story so unsettling and so familiar. Today, as we speak of sustainable development, climate change, and resource depletion, Rapa Nui is no longer a distant mystery. It is a mirror. The stone faces turned inland seem to stare directly at the modern viewer, posing a question that requires no immediate answer. What Moai are we building today, and what will they cost us? Rapa Nui teaches us that science is not only about deciphering the past, it is also about reading the future by confronting the consequences that have already unfolded. A small island in the middle of the ocean accomplished this not through words, but through stone, wind, and centuries of silence. And perhaps that is the most powerful message of Easter Island. When resources are exhausted, no ritual, no matter how grand, can save a society. Only timely change